The forest of Gorath 9 had grown quiet, but not with peace. The Varkesh hunters moved carefully through the mist, their weapons ready, their eyes darting to every shadow. They were skilled, proud and strong, but pride had been replaced by fear. The hunters no longer laughed. They no longer boasted. They whispered. Commander Dravak walked at the front of the largest hunting group he had ever led. He was determined to end the humans' resistance. His armor glinted under the alien suns and his claws were sharp. Every hunter under his command had been chosen for strength and skill. They think they can strike at night and hide. Dravak growled. They think they can make us afraid. Today we hunt them to the last. Today, humans will learn the true meaning of fear. The hunters moved in formation, flanking the rivers, scanning cliffs, and checking every clearing. But the humans had anticipated this. Every path the hunters took led to dead ends, false signals, and traps carefully placed over days. Mara stood with her people on a ridge overlooking the hunters' approach. Her eyes scanned the Varkesh formation. Her heart beat fast, but her mind was calm. We knew this would come, she said softly. They will throw everything they have at us. But the forest is ours, the shadows are ours, and we are not afraid. The humans around her nodded. Jalen checked the last of the devices he had prepared. Sparks and red lights glimmered in small traps designed to confuse the hunters' scanners. Ben and others readied their weapons carved from branches, stones, and captured Varkesh arms. This is our home now, Mara whispered. They came to hunt us, but now they face the last hunt of all. The hunters reached the first line of traps. Ropes snapped, nets fell, and small explosions of fire startled them. The Varkesh beasts growled in confusion, tangled in vines, or bolted into the wrong direction. Dravak's roar echoed through the forest. Advance. Do not stop. Crush them. But every step forward only led them deeper into the humans' strategy. The forest had become a maze, a battlefield of shadows. The humans struck with precision. Stones thrown from cliffs, sudden swings of hidden branches, and tools set to mislead the scanners. One hunter fell into a pit covered by brush. Another was dragged backward by a beast untrained to follow commands. The elite hunters, strongest of all, began to vanish one by one. In the chaos, Mara's group moved like phantoms. They communicated with hand signals, whispers, and the occasional click of a device. Every strike was planned, every retreat timed. They did not seek death for the hunters. They sought control, safety, and victory. The humans had learned quickly. They knew the terrain, understood the predators' behaviors, and predicted their movements. Every hunter that vanished sent fear rippling through the rest. Jalen whispered to Mara as they watched from the trees. Commander Dravak underestimates us. He still believes humans are weak, but he is learning slowly, Mara nodded, and soon he will understand completely. The final confrontation came near the cliffs where the river ran fast and sharp. Dravak had gathered the surviving hunters into a defensive formation, hoping to wait for reinforcements or extraction ships from orbit. He did not realize the humans had blocked the narrow paths behind him. Prepare for the last strike, Dravak shouted.
No one escapes this forest alive.
But the humans were already surrounding the hunters, silent, shadows among shadows. Mara stepped forward, her spear raised, eyes fixed on the Varkesh leader. This ends now, she said clearly. Dravak's eyes narrowed. Humans, you dare face me? Mara did not flinch. You made one mistake. You thought survival was weakness. For humans, it is strength. The battle began with precision rather than chaos. The humans did not rush blindly. They set traps, struck weak points, and forced the hunters into the narrow terrain. The Varkesh fought with all their strength, but the forest worked against them. Rocks tumbled from cliffs, logs blocked paths, and the humans' devices misled their scanners. Hunters who had once chased humans for sport now ran from shadows, tripped over hidden pitfalls, or were forced into the river by sudden collapses. Panic spread quickly. Commander Dravak's roar became sharper, louder, but it could not stop the tide. One by one, hunters were captured, forced to surrender, or trapped until they could no longer resist. The humans showed no cruelty. They needed only to end the hunt, not destroy lives unnecessarily. At last, only Commander Dravak remained, standing on the edge of the cliff. His armor was scratched, his weapons damaged, his pride in tatters. Mara approached slowly, her group surrounding him. Why do you fight so hard? Mara asked calmly. Dravak's voice was harsh but tired. Because I am a Varkesh. Hunters are born from blood and pride. You are prey. That is what you are. That is what you will always be. Mara shook her head. You were wrong. Prey survives. Prey learns. Prey fights. And prey wins when you forget to respect it. Dravak looked at her, his eyes sharp. For the first time he saw not fear but strength. Not weakness but determination. And he understood that the humans had changed the game. The humans secured the landing site where their escape ships hovered above the forest. They had fought, survived, and conquered not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, courage, and unity. Commander Dravak and his remaining hunters were left with no choice but to retreat, battered, humiliated, and filled with a fear they had never known. The forest had belonged to the hunters once, but now it belonged to the humans. As Mara led her people onto the ships, she looked back at Gorath 9, at the forest where humans had faced impossible odds and survived. She felt pride not for herself, but for the courage of every human who had fought, run, planned, and endured. Jalen smiled beside her. We did it. We survived the hunt, Ruth added softly. And now we will be remembered. Ben's voice carried a quiet strength. They came to take our lives. But we took the hunt instead, Mara nodded. The galaxy will hear this story. The hunters who vanished, the humans who fought back, and the day survival became legend. The Varkesh retreated to their ships, carrying the memory of fear and defeat. The forests of Gorath 9 grew silent again, but this time the silence belonged to humans. They had not only survived, they had conquered, and far across the stars whispers of their courage spread. Humans were no longer considered weak or fragile. They were survivors, warriors, and legends. The hunt was over, and for the first time in history the prey had become the hunters. The black ocean of space was quiet, endless, and filled with silence that could swallow even the loudest voices. Among the glittering stars, a small metal pod drifted slowly. It was not larger than a room. Its surface burned from re-entry flames and scarred from debris collisions. Inside it, a young human child sat, strapped into a narrow seat, his eyes wide open and fixed on the small window. The boy's name was Elias, no more than 9 years old. His hair was dark, and his face showed marks of exhaustion. He had been alone for days, his only company the blinking lights of the pod's failing systems. The food reserves were nearly gone, and the water recycler worked weakly. Yet Elias did not cry. His small hands rested calmly on the armrest, and his breathing was steady. He did not fear the emptiness outside, nor the dark silence within. He only whispered to himself sometimes, words of comfort his parents once told him. You are never alone. Humanity always comes. Far away, powerful sensors caught the pod's weak signals. They belonged not to humans but to the Threx Dominion, one of the strongest empires in this region of the galaxy. Their ships were vast, shaped like jagged claws with armor that reflected the light of distant suns. When their scouts detected the distress signal, they changed course quickly. To them, this was not a rescue. It was curiosity. What strange creature dared to wander alone into Threx space? The scout vessel approached, scanning the pod with beams of green light. The crew hissed in amusement when they saw the small form inside. To the Threx, a race of tall, scaled beings with sharp ridges on their heads, the child looked fragile, almost laughable. They opened the pod with robotic arms and lifted Elias out, carrying him aboard their ship. Elias did not scream. His eyes met theirs with quiet strength. Though he was surrounded by alien creatures, he sat straight, his small shoulders squared. The Threx captain, a tall figure with crimson scales, tilted his head in surprise. He had expected tears, begging, or silence. Instead, he saw defiance. Human, the captain hissed in his deep, rattling voice. A young one. Alone. He turned to his crew. How weak must their kind be to let this one wander into our domain? The crew laughed, their hissing echo filling the chamber. To them, Elias was a lost creature, an accident, nothing of importance. The Threx Dominion had conquered dozens of species, and never once had they been challenged over something so small. Why would anyone risk their fleets for a single child? They placed Elias in a detention room, a small cell made of shining metal walls. The boy sat on the bench, his eyes tracing the strange patterns of light. When the door closed, silence returned. Yet his calm did not break. He whispered softly, almost as if reminding himself, "They will come." The Threx scientists soon came to examine him. They studied his hands, his hair, his blood, his heartbeats. They found nothing unusual. To them, humans were weak, their bodies fragile compared to armored species, their lifespan short compared to the elders of the galaxy. The scientists joked that humanity was more a nuisance than a rival. They recorded their findings, eager to display the human child as a curiosity to their leaders. When Elias refused to answer their questions, they mocked him. They asked where he came from, what ship had launched him, but Elias stayed silent. He simply stared at them with steady brown eyes, unshaken by their threats. The scientists grew frustrated. "He is only a child," one of them said. "What strength can he have?" But the captain had noticed something unusual. Most species, when captured, begged for release. Most children, when separated from family, wept. But Elias did not. His stillness was not ignorance. It was faith. Faith in something greater than himself. News spread quickly through the Threx fleet. They had captured a human child, found drifting near the border. Across their communications, soldiers laughed at the idea. A single child was nothing to them. But to prove their dominance, the Threx High Council ordered that the capture be broadcast. Soon, images of Elias appeared on their networks, shown as a trophy. "See," the announcers declared, "this is the strength of humanity. A child, alone and helpless, drifting into our claws." The galaxy watched. Many alien species who lived under Threx control shook their heads silently. They knew humans only as traders and settlers in far-off systems. Few had seen human fleets. Fewer still had fought them. To them, humanity was stubborn, but not dangerous. And yet whispers began in secret. Humans do not abandon their own. They will come for him. The Threx dismissed such talk as fear. No one dared challenge their rule, not for a child. Meanwhile, Elias sat in his small cell, watching the faint glow of the ceiling. He found a broken piece of metal from the bench and began to scratch tiny marks into the wall. One mark became a circle, then another, then lines forming a star. Slowly, carefully, he drew the shape of a constellation he remembered from Earth's night skies. It was his way of keeping home close, even in the heart of enemy territory. Every time a guard passed by and looked inside, Elias sat calmly. He did not rage. He did not plead. He only held the small piece of metal in his hand and whispered, "You will see. They will come." The guards laughed at him, repeating his words as a joke. "They will come," they mocked, hissing with amusement. To them, the boy's faith was foolishness. After all, who would send fleets across the stars for a single child? But far across the galaxy, beyond the edge of Threx sensors, the child's pod had already done its work. Before capture, its emergency beacon had activated, sending a signal rippling through hyperspace. It was not just a simple cry for help. Human engineers had built it to last, built it to reach. The beacon split its message into coded fragments and carried them across multiple relays, ensuring that even if some failed, the core message would still arrive. And it did. On Earth, in the heart of the human Starfleet command, officers received the signal. At first, they thought it was a routine alert, a small matter. But when they saw the origin, when they saw the message embedded inside, human child, captured, location confirmed, everything changed. Within minutes, the news spread through every channel of command. Every admiral, every captain, every fleet officer understood the meaning. This was not just a rescue. This was a declaration. No human is left behind. Not even one child. As Elias whispered in his cell, believing in the unseen, the galaxy turned slowly toward a storm. The Threx Dominion thought it was only one child. To them, it was a symbol of weakness, a trophy to display. But to humanity, it was a promise. A promise that would summon not one ship, not 10, not 100, but fleets so vast the stars themselves would tremble when they arrived. And Elias, sitting alone with quiet courage, already knew the truth. His last words before drifting into sleep were the same. They will come. The stars above Earth burned brighter that night, or perhaps it only felt that way to the watch officers sitting inside the central hub of Earth Command. The room was wide, circular, filled with glowing screens, soft humming machines, and rows of officers working at their stations. At the very center sat the High Admiral's chair, a seat of authority where reports from across the galaxy arrived every second. On that night, a single signal broke through the steady flow of information. It came faintly, buried under layers of static like a whisper traveling across oceans of stars. A technician frowned at his screen, leaning closer. "Sir," he called, his voice tense. "We have an emergency beacon. Human origin, unknown sector." The room quieted. Emergency beacons were rare. They were designed to last, to reach across impossible distances, but they were only activated in moments of absolute desperation. "Patch it through," the duty commander ordered. The signal filled the air. It was broken, fragmented, but within the distortion, a message appeared in glowing letters across the screen. "Human child alive, captured, Threx sector coordinates attached." The technician's hands froze on the controls. His throat went dry. A captured human child so deep inside Threx space? He quickly forwarded the data to the higher channels. Within minutes, the message reached the desk of High Admiral Reeve, commander of all Earth fleets. Admiral Reeve was a tall, stern figure with silver hair and calm eyes. He stood before the vast screen in his command chamber, staring at the coordinates. Around him, aides and officers moved quickly, pulling data from archives, confirming the relay signatures. "Is it authentic?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, sir," one officer replied. "The pod signal matches design codes from the colony fleets. The Threx must have intercepted it." The Admiral's jaw tightened. He understood what this meant. The Threx Dominion had mocked humanity many times before, but this was different. A child, innocent, unarmed, captured as a trophy. For a long moment, Admiral Reeve said nothing. Then, with a steady voice, he spoke. "Send the order. Mobilize every fleet, every dreadnought, every carrier, every ship available. Humanity answers as one." The order spread like fire across the stars, from the icy colonies of Europa to the desert outposts of Mars, from the floating cities of Venus to the deep space stations beyond Neptune. Humanity heard the call. Messages flashed across secure channels. Fleet mobilization. Priority 1. Rescue operation. Captains read the signal and immediately began preparations. Families hugged their loved ones goodbye. Engineers rushed to fuel dreadnought reactors. Soldiers gathered in rows, armor polished, weapons charged. The entire civilization moved with one heartbeat, one purpose: to bring back the child. For humanity, it was not a question of numbers or strategy or politics. It was a matter of identity. No human would ever be left to suffer alone. Not one. Not ever. Among the colonies, whispers spread quickly. Children asked their parents why so many ships were leaving at once. Parents answered with pride, "Because one of us is out there, and no one forgets our own." In a quiet farming settlement on Mars, an old veteran named Carter sat outside his house, watching the skies as fleets rose from the surface. His neighbor asked him why so many ships were leaving. Carter smiled sadly. "Because the galaxy forgot who we are," he said. "They think a child means nothing. But for us, a child means everything." Meanwhile, inside the massive hangars of Earth's orbital stations, dreadnoughts awakened from their silent slumber. These ships were unlike any others in the galaxy. Colossal titans of steel and fire, each larger than cities, armed with weapons capable of shattering fleets. Their hulls gleamed under the light of Earth's sun, their engines glowing like the hearts of stars. One by one they rose from their docks, forming lines across the blackness. First hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Soon the sky around Earth was filled with ships, their combined shadows casting darkness over the planet below. And the numbers only grew. From distant colonies, from mining stations, from hidden outposts, dreadnoughts and carriers poured forth. 500,000 vessels united under one banner, their weapons silent but ready. In the command chamber of the flagship Eternal Resolve, Admiral Reeve stood before his officers. "Make no mistake," he said, his voice echoing across the hall. "The Threx Dominion believes this is just one child. They believe we will stay silent. They are wrong. We are humanity. And humanity does not abandon its own. Not for a planet, Not for a soldier, not for a child. The officers saluted, their faces firm. They knew this was not just a mission of war. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity's strength was not only in ships or weapons, but in unity, in loyalty, in the unbreakable bond between its people. The fleets began their journey. Through hyperspace tunnels they moved, silent giants cutting across the fabric of reality. Navigation officers whispered coordinates, engineers kept engines roaring, and captains kept their hands steady on controls. The fleet stretched so far that even sensors could not measure their end. Outposts in distant systems watched in awe as the human armada passed. Aliens stationed on neutral trade stations sent frantic reports. The humans are moving. 500,000 dreadnoughts. Entire civilizations mobilized. For what? For one child? The galaxy listened. Some laughed at the madness. Some trembled in fear. But all watched, unable to ignore what was happening. Back in Threx space, the child remained in his cell, unaware of the scale of what was coming. Elias still scratched small stars into the wall, still whispered to himself, "They will come." And far away, across light years of distance, humanity whispered the same words, in unison. On every ship, in every colony, in every heart, we will come. The Threx Dominion, however, dismissed the first reports. Their intelligence officers brought them news of human fleet movement, but the High Council only laughed. Impossible, they declared. Humans are scattered, resource-poor. They cannot move such numbers. They are emotional, yes, but foolish. No one risks everything for one child. They raised their banners higher, still displaying Elias as a prize, still mocking humanity in their transmissions. But the laughter would not last. Because the first ripples of humanity's storm were already on their borders, and the stars themselves were beginning to tremble. Across the galaxy, silence turned into whispers, whispers into awe, awe into fear. The humans were coming, not with a few ships, not with a token force, but with 500,000 dreadnoughts. For the first time in history, the galaxy realized the truth. Humanity was not just another species. Humanity was a force, a civilization that measured its strength not by what it conquered, but by how fiercely it protected even its smallest and weakest. And so, the journey continued, the fleets growing ever closer to Threx space. Engines roared like thunder across hyperspace. Dreadnoughts formed walls of steel, and humanity's resolve burned brighter than the stars, all for one child. The halls of the Threx High Council were carved from black stone and metal, towering pillars stretching toward the ceiling like claws reaching for prey. Glowing crystals burned dimly along the walls, giving the chamber a red hue. At the center sat the council throne, where the rulers of the Dominion gathered to speak. Their scaled heads turned as one when the commander of the scout fleet entered, his steps echoing across the chamber. He bowed low, his tail scraping against the polished floor. "Great Council, the human child has been secured. He is held in the capital fortress. The broadcast of his capture has been sent across all systems. Already the lesser species whisper of our strength." The counselors hissed in satisfaction, their voices sharp and cold. "Good," one said. "Let them see what becomes of those who wander into our domain. A single child proves our superiority." None of them noticed the error in their words. None of them thought to ask why the child had not cried, why his eyes had not lowered. They only saw weakness where there had been quiet strength, and in their arrogance they made their first mistake. News of the broadcast spread quickly. Across the galaxy, on trade stations and outposts, the Threx message was replayed. A small human child sitting in a cell guarded by scaled soldiers, his face calm but silent. The Threx announcer's voice boomed, "Behold the fragility of humans. They cannot even protect their young. If they cannot shield one child, how can they shield themselves from the might of the Dominion?" Many species watched in silence. Some nodded in fear, unwilling to challenge the Threx, but others frowned. They remembered whispers about humanity, about their stubbornness, their loyalty, their strange ability to endure where others broke. Among them were the Cairn, an old species once enslaved by the Threx. In their hidden colonies, the Cairn elders murmured, "The Threx mock them now. But humans are not like the others. Humans remember, and humans come." In the fortress cell, Elias traced more stars on the wall with his piece of metal. He was small, but his mind was sharp and his heart unshaken. When the guards mocked him, repeating his words, "They will come, they will come," he only smiled faintly. One evening, a young Threx soldier paused outside his cell. Unlike the others, this one did not laugh. He stared at Elias for a long time before speaking. "Why do you not fear?" he asked, his voice low. Elias lifted his eyes. "Because they will come." The soldier narrowed his eyes. "You are alone. Your kind cannot face the Dominion." Elias shook his head. His voice was soft but firm. "You don't understand. To you I am only one child. But to my people I am all of them, and they do not forget." The soldier said nothing more. He turned and walked away, yet his steps were slower than before, his mind troubled. Meanwhile, in the depths of Threx intelligence centers, warning signs began to appear. Small outposts at the edges of their territory reported unusual gravitational disturbances. Some claimed to see massive energy readings as if fleets were gathering beyond the border. The reports were taken to the council, but the leaders dismissed them with laughter. "Humans?" one scoffed. "They cannot move fleets of such size. Their kind is scattered, weak, emotional. Do you suggest they would risk war with us for a single child?" "Yes," the intelligence officer said carefully. The chamber burst into hissing laughter. The council leader bared his fangs in amusement. "Then you are a fool. No empire would risk so much for one, not even the humans." The officer bowed and left, but in his heart unease grew. For though the council refused to believe, the data spoke for itself. Something vast was moving, and it was moving toward them. In their pride, the Threx committed their second mistake. They chose to display Elias not as a simple captive, but as a trophy. They placed him in the grand arena of their capital city, surrounded by crowds of Threx citizens who cheered their dominance. The announcer declared, "This is the measure of humans. A single child taken with ease, unable to resist. This is what becomes of those who enter our domain." Elias stood in the center, small and quiet, his eyes fixed not on the crowd but on the stars above, faintly visible through the open ceiling. He whispered the same words, barely audible. "They will come." The crowd laughed. They thought it a child's foolish hope. But across the galaxy, hidden observers recorded the event and transmitted it back to human networks. Within hours, every human soldier, every captain, every citizen had seen the image. Their hearts burned with anger. The Threx thought they had shamed humanity. Instead, they had united it. On board the Eternal Resolve, Admiral Reeve stood before his fleet officers as the footage played on the giant screen. The silence in the room was heavy, their eyes locked on the image of the child standing alone, mocked by millions. "Mark this moment," Admiral Reeve said coldly. "They believe they hold a trophy. They believe we will bow our heads, but they have made their greatest mistake. They have reminded us why we fight, not for glory, not for conquest, but for each other." His hand tightened on the edge of the console. "Prepare the fleet. We will show the galaxy what it means to touch even one of our own." In the days that followed, the Threx continued their broadcasts, still blind to the storm gathering beyond their borders. They believed humanity would remain silent, as so many species had done before. They thought fear would keep humans away. But deep within the fortress cell, Elias smiled faintly as he scratched another star on the wall. His small voice carried into the silence, a promise to himself and to the galaxy: they will come. And in the endless dark beyond Threx space, 500,000 human dreadnoughts cut through hyperspace like blades, their engines burning brighter than suns. They came not for conquest, not for resources, not for pride, they came for a child. The endless black of space stretched across the borders of the Threx dominion, calm and silent. Trade ships drifted slowly, patrol fleets followed their usual routes, and outposts monitored the stars with little care. For centuries, no one had dared to challenge the Dominion's control. Their fleets were vast, their armies countless, their power unquestioned. But then the silence broke. At first, it was only a tremor in the void, a ripple across hyperspace, like waves spreading from a distant storm. Threx outposts detected it on their scanners, faint at first, then growing stronger. Officers frowned as numbers filled their screens, numbers far larger than anything they had seen before. "Unusual activity," one reported. "Massive hyperspace signatures. Too many to count," the commander laughed. "Perhaps another race attempts to resist. Let them try." But the ripple did not fade. It grew. It grew until the outposts realized the truth. What approached was not a raiding force, not a single fleet, but something far greater. The first ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Threx border. Dreadnoughts, colossal steel titans, each larger than a city. Their armored hulls glimmered under starlight. Their engines glowed like suns. They did not arrive alone. Behind them came carriers, cruisers, destroyers, support vessels, each one carrying the mark of humanity. And they did not stop. More and more tore through hyperspace, forming endless lines of ships. The void filled with steel walls, their formations stretching farther than the eye could see. 500,000 dreadnoughts and even more escorts beside them appeared in perfect order, like an unstoppable tide. The Threx outpost commander's jaw tightened. His screen filled with red warning lights, each representing a human vessel. His claws trembled as he whispered, "This cannot be." But it was real. Humanity had arrived. News spread quickly. Messages rushed from border stations to the Threx High Council. Officers stumbled over their words, trying to describe what they had seen. 500,000 ships. Impossible numbers. Dreadnoughts everywhere. The council refused to believe. "No species can command such a fleet," one counselor snarled. "The reports are lies." But then came visual evidence. Images of endless human formations, rows upon rows of dreadnoughts stretching across the void. Their hulls carried the blue and silver emblem of Earth Command. Their engines burned brighter than the stars themselves. The council chamber grew silent. For the first time in centuries, the rulers of the Dominion felt something they had long forgotten: fear. Back on the human flagship, the Eternal Resolve, Admiral Reeve stood at the command deck, his hands clasped behind his back. Before him, the vast fleet stretched into infinity. Officers moved around him, their voices calm, their movements steady. "Status of the fleet?" Reeve asked. "All ships in formation. Weapons charged, shields active. Awaiting your command, sir?" The Admiral nodded slowly. His face remained calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "Transmit the message. Let them know why we are here." The communications officer pressed the controls. Across the galaxy, the human broadcast spread. It was not a threat. It was not a boast. It was a simple statement repeated in every major language. "Return the child, or face us." The message echoed through Threx systems. Citizens gathered around public screens. Soldiers froze in their barracks. Commanders stared in disbelief. One human child and 500,000 warships had come for him. The arrogance of the Dominion cracked. Their mistake was clear now. They had believed humanity weak, divided, foolish. But here stood proof of the opposite. A civilization united as one, willing to move heaven and earth for even the smallest of their kind. In the grand arena, where Elias was still displayed, the crowd murmured in confusion as the broadcast reached them. Screens above the arena flickered, showing endless rows of human dreadnoughts. The announcer tried to laugh it off, but his voice shook. Elias lifted his head. For the first time, a small smile spread across his face. He whispered the words he had repeated so many times before. "I told you." They came. Some in the crowd hissed angrily. Others grew uneasy. The laughter faded, replaced by nervous silence. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably, their claws tapping against their weapons. The Threx High Council argued fiercely. "We must crush them at once," one shouted. "With what?" Another snapped. "Even if we gathered every ship in the Dominion, they outnumber us. They outgun us. They have united where no other has." Pride clashed with fear. They had never faced an enemy like this. Humanity was not simply powerful. Humanity was determined, and determination could not be measured by numbers alone. On the borders, the first skirmishes began. Threx patrol fleets tried to intercept the humans, but they were swept aside like leaves in a storm. Human dreadnoughts fired beams of pure energy, tearing through enemy armor with precision. Carriers released swarms of fighters that danced through space, disabling ships without hesitation. The battles were not long. They were not close. They were overwhelming, but Admiral Reeve had given strict orders. No unnecessary destruction. "We are not here to conquer. We are here to reclaim what is ours." Human fleets did not fire on civilian stations. They did not harm the weak. They moved with discipline, with purpose, striking only at military targets, carving a path directly toward the Threx capital. Every step forward carried a message. "We are coming for the child." Elias, still in his cell after the arena event, heard the distant rumble of explosions. The fortress trembled slightly as reports of battles reached the guards. They whispered nervously, their pride fading with every passing hour. One guard muttered, 500,000 ships. Impossible. Another hissed, why would they come for one child? Elias looked at them calmly and answered in his quiet voice, because to them I am not just one child. I am all of them. The guards fell silent, unable to meet his steady gaze. As the fleets advanced, species across the galaxy watched in awe. Races that had once bowed to the Threx suddenly saw hope. If humans could rise for a child, perhaps others could rise too. Whispers of rebellion spread. The galaxy was changing, and the center of that change was a small boy who refused to give up hope. The Threx High Council, desperate and fearful, sent envoys to parley. They attempted to speak with the human fleet to demand terms, but Admiral Reeves' reply was simple. Return the child. Nothing more, nothing less, the council argued again. Some wanted to release Elias quietly to end the threat. Others demanded they hold him, believing humanity would eventually retreat. But pride blinded them still, even as their borders collapsed under the weight of human fleets. That pride was their third and final mistake. Beyond their capital, the skies darkened as the first wave of human dreadnoughts arrived. Their hulls reflected the red glow of the Threx sun, their engines rumbling like thunder across space. The arrival was complete. The storm had reached the heart of the Dominion. Humanity stood at their gates, silent and waiting. And at the center of it all, Elias whispered once more, his voice filled with certainty, his eyes shining with faith. They came.